crazy. Might as well. I'm walking through a ghost town, y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. Yeah, we're lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page, but we still read that book, and we still run that race. Ay, Mississippi Racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi Racer riding out, till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi Racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi Racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay, red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your Friday morning. Mo, the weekend is upon us, sir.
Which for me is a ton more sports coming. College basketball, the in-season, the tournaments that are going on. There's so much going on in sports, Chris. MLB is heating up. The NBA's, they're fighting for placement in terms of who's going to be in the play-in and not in the play-in. There's a lot going on in sports. And, of course, NFL free agency.
Of course, NFL free agency. Let's start there, shall we? The Dallas Cowboys were off to a quiet start with NFL free agency. Not much happened day one or day two. They picked it up a little bit. They signed their long snapper. They signed the Kendricks, the former linebacker from the Chargers. But Mo, one thing that they didn't really do is address the running back position. Now, obviously, they lost Ezekiel Elliott a couple of seasons ago. They lost Tony Pollard this past season, this past offseason and free agency to the Tennessee Titans. They have one running back currently on their roster. That is the rookie that they drafted last season.
Deuce
and
Vaughn.
no offense to Deuce. I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I believe he's about 5'8". He could be 5'9". He is not a big man. So that is it. That is currently their running back position. So you might say to yourself, or say to me if you're a Cowboys fan, well, Chris, we'll draft one in the draft. You and Mo were always saying running backs are a dime a dozen. You can find one in the draft. Okay, you're right. We do always say that. Unfortunately, this is a really terrible draft class when it comes to running backs. I don't think a running back is going to be taken in the first round. I don't think a running back is going to be taken in the second round. I don't think there's first or second round talent in the running back class this season. So, yeah, you're right. You can absolutely take a running back in the draft. I just don't know if you're going to find a running back in the draft that is going to plug in and be a starter. So, again, and everything happens for a reason, right, Mo? Why do you think after an offseason last year where the narrative was no one respects the running back position in the NFL, and then you fast forward 1 year and all of a sudden running backs are getting money. All of a sudden, people like Derrick Henry are getting money. All of a sudden, running backs are getting traded for. Well, why is that? Well, it's because there is no running back draft class this year.
Right.
This is not a sign of the future for the NFL. This is a situation, couple things. One, there were a handful of running backs who were hitting the market together. So the supply of running backs was a little higher than it might usually be. Two, you are looking at situations where people who needed running backs were looking at the draft saying, we're not getting it there. If we want to address the running back position, we are not getting it in the draft. Let's take a look at who's available. Let's pay them accordingly so that we can get them in here, and let's just get it done. And they did. They went and they paid accordingly, and they got it done. Unless you're the Dallas Cowboys, who said, we got Vaughn. We got Vaughn, Mo.
We're good.
We got Vaughn.
We're good.
Are they good? They good with Vaughn?
No, they're not good, but I mean, that's
Oh,
probably what they're saying. They're good. Like they're going to have to address the running back position, and I'm not going to say that Deuce Vaughn can't turn out to be a really good change of pace running back, but I think that's what he is anyway, and I think they know that they need a running back that can carry the ball 20 plus times a game and be effective at it as well, and not to mention there's other things running backs have to do, recognize and pick up pass protection and things of that nature. You're not going to do it with the 5'8" guy. That's not how that works. So I'm assuming because of where we're at now in free agency that they plan on drafting a running back in a year where you just acknowledge it's a poor running back class.
and Cottrell is dropping the knowledge over here in the chat. If you're in the chat, make sure you check out what Cottrell is saying. He knows the college running back situation far better than I do. I'm not saying there isn't any talent out there. There is definitely talent. But as a whole, you're not going to find that top tier talent at the running back position coming out. But Mo, I had that conversation so that we could have this conversation. Dak Prescott. Say what you want about Dak Prescott. Everybody has an opinion about Dak Prescott. Everyone has an opinion about his stats. Everybody has an opinion about whether or not he is a quarterback or a B quarterback or a C quarterback. Opinions about Dak Prescott do not matter this morning because we are simply going to look at facts. And the facts we are going to look at is what happens when Dak Prescott is the starting quarterback and he has a running back that does certain things behind him. Let's start there. When Dak Prescott is a starting quarterback and his running game runs the ball 30 times or more in his career, Mo, he wins almost 86% of his games. As a starting quarterback, when the team that he is starting for, and it's only been the Dallas Cowboys, rushes for 30 times or more, he wins almost 86% of his games, okay? As a starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, when his running backs combine for 100 yards rushing or more, he wins about 75% of his games. So when there is a running game in Dallas, Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback. He wins a lot of games when there is a running game. 30 plus carries, 100 plus yards. Well, what happens when not? Is he just an average quarterback, Mo? When in Dallas as a starting quarterback, when the team rushes for less than 100 yards, he has won 9 times in his career. 9, Mo.
Wow. So we didn't even do percentages. We didn't need to.
You can count on one hand, 2 hands. You can count on, if you can count on one hand, then I'm a little scared. You can count on 2 hands the number of games Dak Prescott has won in his career as a starting quarterback in the NFL when his team has rushed for less than 100 yards a game. And that answer is 9. So you can sit here this morning as a Cowboy fan and say all you want about Dak. You can say all you want about the line. You can say all you want about the weapons. The bottom line is Dak Prescott is a better quarterback, substantially better. Patrick Mahomian better when he has a running game that is productive. And by productive, I mean you're feeding the ball 30 plus times, and the result of that is 100 plus yards on the ground. Mo, when that happens, it equals wins for Dallas. It is a statistical fact over Dak Prescott's career, but yet here we are, and I'm not so sure where we're going with that if you're Dallas.
I'm not so sure where they're going either because let's not forget, their offensive line isn't what it was. They just lost the guy that was the anchor at the left tackle spot for the better part of a decade, and that hasn't been addressed yet. The interior of that offensive line isn't what it was, and that hasn't been addressed yet. And then we talk about a running back because, look, you can go out and get a stud running back, but if your offensive line is average or below average, you're probably not going to have a very good running game. I don't know what the Joneses, because you always say it is the Joneses, right? Like Jerry and his sons, they make the decisions. I know all in means we're going to re-sign the guys that we need to re-sign in terms of Dak and CD Lamb. Obviously, I get that. You're gonna resign those guys. You're gonna resign Michael Parsons. That's a given. But if you don't address the offensive line, if you don't address the running back, if you're looking at numbers, and I know every team's got analytics guys that are crunching the numbers, you have to know what you just said, right? Dak's much better if he's a complement to an effective running game. I haven't seen them address that yet. My guess is, and to what Cottrell said, and look, Cottrell is the maestro of college football. He's probably right. They're going to go out and find a guy, draft a guy who will be their starter. I'm just wondering if they're going to address the offensive line as well.
And Chris, I agree. Chris in the chat. I'm not talking to myself, the third person. Chris,
like you're the Rock, ahead,
right? Chris, I agree that almost all quarterbacks are better with a productive running game, but you have to understand when you're talking to Dallas Cowboy fan, they sometimes, a lot of them, put their quarterback into that top echelon of quarterback with a Patrick Mahomes, with a Josh Allen, with a Lamar Jackson. And I specifically mentioned those three because they don't need a running game to win football games. Oftentimes, and in big situations, I'm talking playoffs, a little less for Lamar and Josh than Patrick in those situations. But in big games, what you see is they are often the leading rusher for their team. So if the running game isn't there by design because they don't have a running back because, every single one got hurt if you're Baltimore, or for a while there, you just didn't bother getting one if you're Buffalo, or if you're Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, you have a couple of decent ones, but Mahomes just wants to take over. Whatever the case might be, there have been times where those three quarterbacks haven't had productive running games, and they've been the running game. They overcome. And my point to that is Dallas Cowboy fan thinks Dak Prescott is an overcomer. And the stats will tell you he is not an overcomer. He needs everything to be good around him. He needs an offensive line. He needs a productive running game. He needs weapons. By the way, Mo, they have one. His name is CD Lamb.
And
he better be healthy the entire season, because they are one CD Lamb injury away with their way the team is currently comprised to not making the playoffs, to not winning double-digit games. Like, if you look at this roster, and I know we still have to go through the draft, and there's still some more names out there, but if you are looking at actual playmakers on this Dallas offense, and CD Lamb, if you want to tell me CD's a top 3 wide receiver, I'm not going to agree with you, but I'm going, because I will entertain that conversation 100%. He is a very talented wide receiver. He is also your only weapon. So if you are not going to get CD Lamb help, and you are just going to go in here with a third-round running back and a couple of other pieces that you picked up along the way, again, if this was Patrick Mahomes, I'd be okay with it. I'd say, hey, he's got CD Lamb. We're good to go. He's not Patrick Mahomes, though, Mo. So, and isn't that the difference? Isn't that the difference? If you took Dak Prescott and you put him on the Kansas City Chiefs last year, what happens? They don't win a Super Bowl.
They don't win a Super Bowl. Let's start there. They don't win a Super Bowl. So so let's just bottom line it. They don't win the Super Bowl.
Right. I think that it doesn't get any crystal clearer than that. And if you put Patrick Mahomes on the Cowboys with somebody like CD Lamb,
well, if that's the case, then the Niners don't come out of the NFC.
See, just be honest with yourself this morning. It's okay, Cowboy fans. Dak is a good quarterback.
He is. He's a good quarterback.
He just isn't elite, and that's all right. All right, enough Cowboy talk this morning, Mo. Oh man, talking all this Cowboy nonsense. Mo, I want you to take just, and we haven't talked about this, and you've never burned me in these we haven't talked about it conversations.
Nah.
And I feel like tomorrow, this might be the morning. Think about the world of NCAA college basketball right now, okay? Top of your head, don't look it up, best you can do. name me 3 stars in men's college basketball.
Yeah, I can't name you any. I don't even follow men's college basketball like that. I just don't.
Okay.
I don't
Name
have the
me
connection to it that I used to.
name me some stars in women's college basketball.
Well, you can obviously you can start off with Caitlin Clark, lightning
Oh.
quick, right?
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can go with the Bayou Barbie, a few
Oh.
others. The young lady that's in US. I know where you're going with this. I got you.
Now, wait. Do you follow women's college basketball like that?
I actually do. I actually do. Don't get me wrong. I do enjoy men's college basketball, but I'm like this. I only enjoy it during March Madness. I don't really care about it over the course of the season, but I can actually follow women's college basketball during the course of the season. There's the difference.
And I'll tell you right now, if you're listening, I'm not going to sit here and say silly things like the women's March Madness tournament is going to dwarf the men's. That's not what we're here to say this morning. But I am here to say, and I think I feel very comfortable saying this, Mo, the game of women's college basketball, at least for right now in the moment, has surpassed that of men's college basketball. And you can look no further than going to a casual sports fan and just ask them, tell me, who are you excited about coming out of college to join the NBA? If they give you a name, then ask them what their favorite college team is. Because if that person plays for their favorite college team, it doesn't count. Do they know anyone aside from whatever team they are loyal to? Chances are, Mo, they probably don't. Why? Because there's no one really being talked about. So unless you are a nitty-gritty NBA guy, NBA draft guy, lottery guy, unless you cover college basketball for your podcast or your work or you write about it, there isn't really anyone in the spotlight that you look at and you're like, oh my God, we need to watch this game tonight because this kid is playing and he is electric and I need to see that. Mo, that's happening with 3 or 4 different women right now in women's college basketball.
Correct.
And not only is it happening with the players, you even got personalities over there, lover or hater.
Kim Mulkey.
That head coach for LSU,
Kim Mulkey, yes.
She is money TV. Even if you hate her guts and think that she is ridiculous, you're still talking about her. You're still watching press game clips about her.
Right.
And
she happens to be a hell of a coach, by the way.
Press is press. And she has a winning team. And she has a team that is vying for a national. So you can sit here and say, well, Chris, I don't like her. It disgusts me the way you're talking about her. You know about her. How many men's basketball coaches in college are you talking about right now? Not many. You might know more men's coaches. That's fine. Then you know women's coaches. Okay, that's good.
But you do. But you're gonna know Mulkey. You're gonna know Don Staley. Everybody knows Gino Auriemma. You know what I mean? Like, they do have bigger stars. That's kind of weird, right? Their coaches are bigger stars. Their stars are bigger stars. The biggest name in college basketball that I hear all the time, and I'm not trying to bang on the kid, they talk about Bronny a lot. And he's not even one of the better players, but his name is the name that gets brought up more than the guys that are the better players. And I think that says all that needs to be said about 100%. The state of men's college basketball.
100%. Bronny is the name that is talked about more than anybody else because of who his father is. Correct. Not because of what's happening on the court. So as we enter March Madness, if you are a fan of basketball, I implore you, do not ignore the women's bracket. I know that because of gambling and because of betting, the men's stuff is always going to be hot. I know that there are people out there that never watch a lick of college basketball until March Madness, and then they go and they put money into a bracket like it's a lottery ticket, and they're just hoping to strike gold. That's fine. That is perfectly okay. But if you actually like basketball, I implore you to watch the women's tournament this year. Not all of it. You can just circle 4 or 5 teams with the 4 or 5 stars that we're talking about. It's going to be great basketball. It is going to be great entertainment. Hopefully, Mo, it is going to be better defense than we saw with Tennessee against South Carolina
Oh,
the other night when
no.
Tennessee just decided that there's no way she can hit a 3, so we're
Right.
not going to cover her because I don't think she made one all season. Doesn't mean you don't cover her.
They just wrote her. They just wrote her off as a self check, and guess what? Show and prove. They wrote her off as a self check.
She banged it down.
She did.
But in all seriousness, Mo, I again, and Cottrell, he talked about this a little bit on Wire to Wire Sports, and I think he's on to something. He agreed that the tournament as a whole isn't going to draw numbers the way the men's tournament does, but he is convinced that the Final Four could compete and maybe even be higher than the men's Final Four.
Oh,
And
I agree.
I think he's onto something there.
I think he's right. I'm with Cottrell 100. Look, to borrow his word, the women's game is electric, and I think they have not just the stars, but they have that edge where there's some rivalries. It's more competitive. It is. It draws you in because of the stars, the personalities, the coaches. It's just better basketball. For cut and dry, it's better basketball.
Well, let's talk about this. There are certain teams in the NFL that they cannot get out of their own way. And I think we talk about the Chicago Bears a lot with this. I mean, you talk about the Bears. I'm pretty confident. I found the stat a couple of weeks ago. The Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. Never. In the history of their organization, they have never had a quarterback who has passed for 4,000 yards. Now, if we're talking late 80s, early to mid 90s, okay, there's a lot of quarterbacks that didn't pass for 4,000 yards, late 80s, early to mid 90s. But once you get past 2010 in the NFL, 4,000 is basically the new 3,000. Like, with the way the rules are set up in the NFL today, passing yards come in chunks. You look at the way defense is played in the NFL today. If a team is up double digits midway through the fourth quarter or on, they're just giving you passing yards underneath. You're just picking up chunks and chunks and chunks because they're letting you do it because they're just making sure you don't score touchdowns, right?
Right.
So getting passing yards, whether they're junk stats or whether they're it's just a lot easier in today's game. So as a result, we're seeing a lot more quarterbacks get it. I mean, I remember back in 2013, 2014, it was like Tannehill's second or third year with Miami. He went for 4,000 yards. And it was a big deal because Miami hadn't seen that since Dan Marino. But let's be honest, Ryan Tannehill is not Dan Marino. And you look across the league and you look at the last 10 years or so at the guys who have hit 4,000, some are great. Some are. Others, you're like, okay. But Chicago has never had one. And you look at Chicago, Mo, and you say to yourselves, man, they're so stuck in their defensive ways. I mean, look at the money that this year they're allocating to linebackers. They just gave all this money to a cornerback. Great corner, by the way. Just saying, great corner. But so much money is being spent on the defensive side of the ball. And we can sit here and we can rail on Chicago a lot this morning. But I opened up the conversation actually not to talk about Chicago. I want to talk about another team, Mo. I want to talk about a team that just traded away maybe their best wide receiver, but if not their best, definitely their second best. I would argue that he probably is their number 2, but has a higher ceiling than their number 1. And they traded him away for an average cornerback. I don't think he is a great cornerback. He's definitely not an elite cornerback. And then after that, they go and they spend a ton of money on a linebacker who, yeah, he's good, but he's not great. And that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh, what are we doing? You're just like the Chicago Bears. You can't get out of your own way. Defense does not rue the day in the NFL the way it did 20 or 30 years ago. And yet consistently, you do things like spend more on the defensive side of the ball than any other team in the NFL. And next year, this upcoming season, it's going to be quite the same. And they're going to be doing it by a very large margin. You're getting rid of offensive. Let's not act like you had a plethora of offensive weapons. You just had so many weapons you could spare one because you desperately needed a cornerback. That wasn't really the case. And I'm not going to sit here and try to say Diontae Johnson is all world. But when you look at that offense, he was a piece that you needed, Mo.
And he's a talented player.
And he is a talented player. And I think, and Matt, you can disagree with me if you want, but I think his ceiling, his potential, and I know it's hard to encapsulate potential, I think his potential is higher than Pickens. I think Pickens is a better receiver right now, but I think Diontae Johnson could have been equal to, if not a little better. Doesn't matter now, he's gone. Pickens is your main wide receiver. Who is your number 2? You have a nice tight end over there in Freiermuth. You have a couple of decent backs in there. I'm not a big Najee Harris guy, but when you pair him with Warren, you got a nice 1-2 punch. But you're bringing in a quarterback, and I know it's only a 1-year deal, but you're bringing in a quarterback that needs pieces around him. Right. He needs weapons on offense. He needs help on offense, which is okay because when you went and got him, you had a couple of good wide receivers. You had a couple of good backs. You had a decent tight end. And then you start getting rid of those pieces to bring in a middle-of-the-road corner. And then you spend money and you go and sign Queen. He's a good linebacker, but Mo, like, what spend money on the offensive side, Pittsburgh. Oh, by the way, Pittsburgh, how's your O-line doing? Because I feel like you haven't really fixed that in the last 7 or 8 years either. And you keep kind of piecing that together. Like, what are we doing on the offensive side of the ball in Pittsburgh?
And so the interesting thing is defense doesn't rule the day unless you've got a special quarterback who can make something out of nothing and acknowledge that, okay, we're more of a defensive oriented team. I'll just kill you, 1,000 cuts, right? With you know what I mean? Like, and that's what Mahomes did. They weren't the explosive Chiefs of the past. They were very methodical. They milked the clock. They controlled the chains, and that's how you win. But that's because you had that guy. In today's football, you have to be able to score the football, and you have to have diversity on offense. And when you bring in a Russell Wilson, and you know this isn't Russell Wilson from 5 years ago, this is a Russell Wilson who's, I don't want to use the term game manager. I think he's better than that, but he's no longer one of the elite quarterbacks. You would want to have more weapons around him to make it easier for him to set him up for success. So I get it. They're trying to buffer their defense, and I would be trying to go the other way. I'd be shoring up that offensive line. I'd be adding weapons to Russell Wilson so that he has playmakers. Maybe you can get away with Russell Wilson hitting you with a 6-yard slant because you've got a guy that can make people miss and turn the 6-yard slant into a 60-yard touchdown. You need to surround him with playmakers because he's no longer the playmaker he once was. We think of Russell Wilson, Chris, and we talk about his wheels. He doesn't have the same wheels anymore. He's mobile, but he's not the guy that can escape and get you a 20-yard run here and there. That guy's not coming back. So I don't understand what Pittsburgh's doing because they're saying, Russell, it's a 1-year deal. Here's your audition. And I'm cool with the 1-year deal from Russell Wilson, but set me up for success for the 1-year deal, not we're going to put everything into the defense.
Or at least keep what you have. Don't get me in the building and be like, oh, by the way, you're not going to have that. We're sending that out for a corner. Like, if I sign on and I see what you have and I want you and you want me, great. But don't bring me in and then start giving away the pieces. Right. Because now I'm going to be like, well, wait a minute here. I needed him.
Great. Right. Pretty soon they're going to go like, we're probably going to get rid of Harris and just go with Warren. Like,
right.
dropping weapons left and right.
You can run a little Russ, right? You
right.
can cook. We're going to let you cook.
Right. Yeah, and you're bringing in the offensive coordinator who was with the Falcons that I'm not that high on, but that doesn't mean he won't do well. Everybody can get off to a rocky start. Everybody can turn it around. I'm just trying to figure out like Pittsburgh's path forward because I thought with what you had offensively, all you needed to do was add Russ. because I liked the tandem that they had on the outside. I don't understand why you would, unless you see somebody in the draft that goes, no, that guy right there, he can start right away. Like, and maybe that's the case. Maybe they feel like Pickens is the kind of guy that is elite enough to where you can put an average guy over there and he can elevate him as well. Maybe that's the case.
Maybe that is how they feel. In the category, Mo, of shaking my head, I have no idea when this video came out. I stumbled upon it last night. Did you know that Jerry Jeudy, that's right, that guy, he's just a guy, Jerry Jeudy, new wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, did you know that he wears a Star of David around his neck?
Had no idea.
Me
I did
neither.
not know that.
Me neither. The video I came across was someone asking him about his faith and asking him about his Star of David pendant. And no, Mo, don't stop being logical, because he's not Jewish. I know. Yeah.
And he's wearing it because
his nickname is Jew.
Is this a real story?
Yes.
And that was a real answer?
That's a real answer. He was standing at a podium. He was still, I believe this is from last season when he was still a Bronco. And so he's wearing the big Star of David pendant. It looks like he has some sort of a picture in the middle of it. And someone said, why do you wear the Star of David? I'm assuming they knew he wasn't Jewish. And he said, my last name is Judy, and my guys call me Jew. So, Jew Star, like he's linking the things up for us because we can't get there on our own. Right. And then at the end of it, he goes, and I'm not Jewish. As if you need to state, like, it was the most ridiculous 30-second clip in the world. Just really? A guy. He's just a guy.
Come on,
That's
man.
All I'm saying. It's just
Come
a
on.
guy.
Yeah, if your guys call you Jew, then spell it out the way you spell your name. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you spell and make it clear that way. But the way he did it, dude, say less. Say a lot less. Say less.
Mo, some news came out, a little more clarity in regards to the Chicago Bears. I'm not defending Chicago by any stretch of the imagination, but we are curious as to why a deal with Justin Fields didn't get done. We are kind of going off the working knowledge of maybe they were asking too much, and I think that's still a part of it. But apparently, at least if you're on the Chicago side of it, there was a plan in place. Rumors are coming out now from people who are tied to the organization that the plan initially was to wait. They knew that the Steelers and the Falcons were interested, but they also knew that they thought they would be in a better position as far as leverage on their end goes if they waited for the first wave of quarterbacks to sign. They did not anticipate Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta. They did not anticipate Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh. Their mindset was wait for the first round of guys to sign. Then we'll have a couple of teams left over who are interested. We'll take the best package. We'll be able to leverage the best offer, and we'll move Justin. Clearly, it did not work out that way.
Right.
So Russ goes to Pittsburgh, Kirk goes to Atlanta, and now you're left with a situation of, well, where the hell is Justin Fields going to go? Mo, that makes it pretty clear, if you're to believe that line of thinking, that they are going to trade Justin Fields, and they are going to use the first-round pick on Caleb Williams, if we're to follow that line of thinking.
Right.
But the question remains, where is Justin Fields going to go? And now new reports from last night suggest that maybe he goes to a team like a Philadelphia where he isn't going to start. Maybe he goes to a team and he is going to be a backup for a year or two. And then this third team will be the next team that he starts for. And if you look across the landscape of the NFL, Mo, kind of makes sense, because outside of the Raiders, maybe Minnesota is the best landing spot for him, but they're not going to trade him to Minnesota. They're not going to trade him in division. So take Minnesota off the board. Outside of the Raiders, what other team really needs a starting quarterback that can't get one in the draft? Because that's the key, right? You're looking at the draft and you're saying, okay, Chris, there's going to be 3, 4, 5 potential starters coming out of the draft. So if you make your list of teams, and we can talk about it right now, Mo, I'll tell you all the teams that are not going to need Justin Fields because they're going to address it in the draft. The Commanders, the Patriots, they're going to get their quarterback in the draft. The Giants, if they want a quarterback, they're going to get him in the draft. The Falcons have their quarterback. The Titans have their quarterback. If the Jets want to get the quarterback for after Aaron Rodgers, they're going to get it in the draft. You have Minnesota, who we said for all those reasons he's not going to go to. Denver is a possibility.
They need it. Yeah, they need a quarterback.
They need a quarterback. They're drafting 12th. They could potentially land the 4th or the 5th best quarterback, but they could also trade for Justin Fields. So that's a realistic possibility. And then you have the Raiders. That's it. So if it's not one of those two teams, and yeah, the Raiders showed a little bit of interest, rumored, nothing certain, in Fields. I haven't heard anything linking Denver to him. So if it's not that, it's probably a backup situation. And what are you getting for a backup quarterback? A 5th? A 6th round pick? I mean, barring injury, Mo, it looks like that stock took a huge hit because they decided to wait and play it out, play the long game.
I just think it's amazing that he was once potentially a starting quarterback for a few franchises, and he might literally spend this coming season as a backup. That's such an incredible turnaround. For him. And I'm just thinking about him because look, he's an unfinished product, but he's clearly has talent, and he's probably younger than a few of the guys that are coming out as quarterbacks. Like he's still a very young man, and it's just strange that suddenly he's going to be a backup for a year. And look, that might be in some ways good too, right? Because he'll come out of next year, Chris. He'll still be a young man. It's not like he's going to age. He's still going to be a young man. I'm just wondering, though, we go into next offseason, is there going to be a bigger market? Because if a lot of these guys pan out this year, I don't think that bodes well for him. Like he's almost going to end up in a situation like Trey Lance, right?
Yeah.
Like Trey Lance isn't going to be starting anytime soon for the Dallas Cowboys, barring obviously an injury of some nature. But he's probably going to be in that kind of situation, and that's just so bizarre because so many people, including the NFL Genius, thought Atlanta would have been the spot, and I think because the Bears front office made this incredible miscalculation, this kid's going to be sitting on the bench this coming season, and that's just crazy to me.
Mo, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, would you give up a 5 for him?
Yes.
You only got Russ for a year.
Right, yes.
Why not? Now, don't give up a 2 or a 1 or a 3 or even a 4. Maybe a 4. But if you can get him for a low pick, why not give up 1 pick, bring him in, tell him you're not starting this season pending injury. You're going to learn from Russ. You're going to learn the offense. You're going to become acclimated to our system. And then we'll see where we are after this season. If we decide to move on from Russ, we'll give you an opportunity to compete. If Russ stays for year 2, then you'll back him up for another year. Why not? Because you almost you don't. If you're Pittsburgh, you have a plan. You have a 1-year plan. You don't have a long-term plan. If you bring in Fields, you not only have a plan this year, you basically have a plan moving forward as well.
I actually like that better.
It may not work out. I don't know if Justin Fields can lead a Pittsburgh to the promised land. I think he needs weapons. I think he needs an offensive mindset. I don't think he's going to thrive with a defensive head coach, with a team with a defensive mentality. But it makes sense for both sides. If Justin Fields wants to be a franchise quarterback still, and if the Pittsburgh Steelers want to try to get their franchise quarterback in-house this season, potentially, it makes sense. Outside of that, if he goes to Philly, he's there to learn for a year. And then maybe some team contacts Philly out of necessity or kicking whatever. It's so uncertain. Anything could happen at that point if he goes to a team like Philly, because we know what's not happening. He's
not
not supplanting Hurts as a starting quarterback.
Correct. But the Steelers idea makes sense because then that means they immediately have a succession plan in place. Right? Russ is there. Even if let's say Russ plays well for 2 years and maybe they make it to an AFC title game and lose, I think Fields takes over the reins. And if he's learned the offense and the system, and the offensive coordinator is smart enough to realize his skill set and what plays his skill sets, you would have your franchise quarterback going forward for the next decade.
I like it. Now, is it going to happen? Who the heck knows? But I like it. We have some rumors, not rumors, some moves that happened in the NFL last night and late in the day yesterday. Keenan Allen is traded to the Bears. That's really big because they had DJ Moore, who was a nice wide receiver, and Cole Kmet is a nice receiving tight end. And now you add Allen to that mix, and they're adding some weapons on the offensive side, something the Bears don't usually do. So it's setting it up nicely for what looks to be the arrival of Caleb Williams and him having some offensive firepower, which is a good thing. Don't forget, even if they take Caleb Williams, they still have the number 9 pick in the draft. So they could still potentially bring in another valued wide receiver or some other skill position to go with Caleb Williams. So we'll see what happens there. Hollywood Brown has a new home, Mo. If you haven't seen it, there were some cringy tweets that were sent from Andy Reid to Hollywood Brown, welcoming him to Kansas City. But Mo, this is big for Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not saying that Hollywood Brown is an elite wide receiver. He is not. But I'm going to tell you right now, Hollywood Brown is a receiver who can get open. He can separate. He can catch the ball on a consistent basis. And it sounds ridiculous to say, but if you're the Chiefs, that's what you need. You need receivers who can separate and catch the ball when the ball is thrown to them. That is the starting point of becoming a wide receiver in Kansas City. Because, by the way, they just won a Super Bowl without having that. So now they're bringing in guys who can get open and who can catch the ball consistently. Like, we're already upgrading. That's all I'm saying.
And Hollywood Brown has the speed to take the top off the defense. He's not one of the top wide receivers in football, but you put him with a Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have a career year. I'll put it that way. He's going to have a career year. He immediately improves their offense because of his speed. And like you said, the basic fundamentals, he can run routes, can beat one-on-one matchups, and he can catch the football. You're hired.
Welcome aboard. Essentially, you're getting rid of MVS and replacing him with Hollywood Brown. That's what we call a upgrade, Mo.
Yeah, yes, sir.
A big upgrade. Also, the Washington Commanders trade their starting quarterback from a year ago, Sam Howell, to the Seattle Seahawks for a 4th-round pick. This is almost a Pittsburgh Steelers situation, is it not?
Yeah.
You have Geno Smith, who has had some success. 2 years ago, great season. Last year, more Geno-like than we thought he would probably play. And now you bring in Sam Howell, who put up some numbers with a bad team in Washington. We're not saying he's going to start this season, but if I told you he started next season and a couple of seasons after that, you wouldn't think I was crazy, because this looks like this could be the succession plan. They're going to bring him in. I'm willing to bet he has an opportunity to compete for a starting job. I don't think they're just going to give it to Geno blindly. Now, I think they are going to support Geno in the media, and I think they're going to tell Geno the job is his to lose. I don't think they're going to make it a 50-50 open quarterback competition, but I do think that if Sam Howell comes in and he is just blowing them away in OTAs and he is blowing them away during preseason football, there is a chance he could win the starting job. I also think that if Geno comes out of the gate and his first 4 or 5 games are subpar next season, that there is a chance Sam Howell could replace him midseason. And I don't have an issue with any of that, Mo, because if you're going to give up a fourth for a young quarterback that was a starter last season, that's why you're going to do it, correct?
You're giving up that fourth because, like we talked about earlier, this is your succession plan. I don't think they're pushing Geno out the door, but they are bringing in the guy who's going to eventually be the guy.
Which is smart. This is smart business. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, it only costs you a 4th-round pick. You didn't sacrifice a top 10 pick in the NFL draft for a guy who didn't work out. This isn't going to set your franchise back 2 or 3 years because it didn't work out. Yeah. You're going to know for the most part, based on what you see at practice, what you see during training camp, if he gets in there this season and play, you're going to know pretty quickly whether you like what you have or you're like, no, not really. We're going to draft someone next season. You're going to know. This isn't going to be a 3 or 4 year process where you're hoping, and because we spent so much draft capital on him, we have to ride it out at least 3. Nope, that's not going to be a conversation. You'll probably know end of this year, or if Geno does start the entire season, end of next year, if he starts next year, kind of where you are.
No, I agree 100%. I really think that this is a smart move by the Seahawks management. I think they're forward thinking this way. Matter of fact, because he's up there in upper management now, I wouldn't be surprised if Pete Carroll didn't have some say in this move. And it might be as simple as you laid out, Chris. Geno is the starter, but if he gets off to a slow start, Sam Howell is somebody that he can immediately step in. He's already proven he can play at a high level. And maybe what he needs is a change of scenery for him to thrive. So I think it's a great move. It's low risk, high reward.
We found out this week that Drew Lock agreed to sign with the New York Giants because he was told he would have an opportunity to compete to be the starting quarterback of the New York Giants. Mo, what is going on at the quarterback position when you are signing Drew Lock and promising him an opportunity to compete to be your starting quarterback? And that is the foundation of why he is agreeing to join your team. What is going on at the starting quarterback position for your team that conversation takes place at all? That is wild.
That's
if
insane.
You are Daniel Jones and you are seeing that story, you are a $40+ million quarterback in this league. They tabbed you to be the franchise quarterback of this franchise. And this is going to sound super disrespectful to Drew Lock. And I am sorry, because Drew Lock, you are the 1%. You are the 1% of athletes that want to play college football at the quarterback position or want to play professional football, and you got there. You are in the 1%, right? And you are competing to be the 1% of the 1%. Not just a guy who got there, but a guy that is actually going to start meaningful games at the quarterback position for a franchise. No disrespect, Drew, but you're not that guy.
I didn't know Drew Lock had that kind of say. Like,
right.
what has he done to where he can go, like, I'm only going to go there if I get a shot at starting? Like,
and then they say, okay, fair.
Right. Because
fair.
Normally somebody normally, Chris, with his resume and his career, you'd be like, he'd be just grateful to get signed by the Giants, right?
But anything I can do to help, I'll be the backup, whatever you need.
Right.
Rah guy.
Right. But he's coming in there looking at Daniel Jones like, suck. You know what I mean? Like, we're basically the same.
I can beat that guy. I can beat that guy.
If he can, what does that say about them for giving Danny Dimes $40 million? Which we knew. We knew he was not worth that kind of money. Daniel Jones is a capable quarterback, but he's more game manager than a star franchise quarterback. He's not the guy you build around. He's not that guy. Literally, when Tyrod Taylor came in, who's been a journeyman for the better part of his career, he was better than Daniel Jones. He actually did everything Daniel Jones did, but better and for a far lesser price tag. And remember the young man who was like a folk hero for a minute, DeVito stepped in, and he looked better than Daniel Jones. So when I think about it that way, maybe that's why Drew Lock feels cocky. Like, I'm actually better than both those guys. I got you.
I got you. The Eagles and the Falcons are in trouble. It looks like there might have been some tampering, Mo. Not that word, tampering. No. As a Dolphin fan, I know all about tampering. We tried to get ourselves a little Tom Brady action a couple of years ago. It appears that the Eagles had some inappropriate contact with Saquon Barkley prior to him signing, and it appears that the Falcons could have had some inappropriate contact with Kirk Cousins. The situations are this: Kirk Cousins himself referred to having contact with some of the athletic trainers for the Atlanta Falcons. If that is true and it matches the timeline to which he alluded to, it would fall within the illegal tampering timeframe. With Saquon Barkley, one of his former coaches, who currently is with Penn State, he was talking about Barkley and Barkley returning to Pennsylvania. And in his comments, he talked about Barkley telling him of a conversation that he had with the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles about coming home to Pennsylvania and joining the Philadelphia Eagles. And if that conversation did take place, it also would have fallen into the illegal tampering timeframe. Now, we've seen this happen before. 2015, the Chiefs lost a couple of draft picks, a third and a sixth, because they illegally tampered with Jeremy Maclin before free agency. We saw this with the Miami Dolphins a couple of years ago. They had the meetings with Tom Brady talking about team ownership and all this other nonsense. They got hit pretty hard for tampering in that situation. I don't think it's as bad as the Tom Brady thing, but at the same time, the league has come down pretty hard. Losing a third and a sixth is a big deal. Obviously, with Miami, they lost some first-round picks in there. So, Mo, if this ends up being proven on either end, both of these teams can expect to be losing some draft capital.
Yeah, well, look, if you get caught, you got to pay the piper. If it is true that Saquon had contact with Howie Roseman, that's going to be a problem. And the way the Dolphins were hit, you say it's not as bad as that situation, but I think the league, because that has happened, that you know the rules. I don't think the leagues are going to take it light on either franchise. I think so. I think they're going to get hit pretty hard.
And we're not going to sit here and say, Mo, we're not naive. This happens all the time. We know that. We know this happens all the time. We know that all the teams do it. Why do you think people get signed so quickly during the legal tampering period? Because they're having backdoor conversations, right? Whether it be through them personally, whether it be through their agents. Obviously, there's a lot of backdoor talk happening, which is how these deals come together so quickly. But Mo, you can't leave a paper trail.
No.
You can't allow the league to know you did it. And when Kirk Cousins is saying things and the league's like, you did what? You talked to who? When?
Right.
They're like, okay, let's look into that. When you got people in Saquon's circle, former coach, being like, he talked to who, when? Oh, homecoming, Pennsylvania, a couple days ago. That seems suspicious. Let's look into, you know what I mean? Like, that they're not looking for it, Mo. They're not looking for it unless you give it to them.
Right. So you don't meet at the restaurant where it's $400 a plate. You walk into a park with a sack lunch and have that meeting.
Exactly.
And then when you walk away, you throw the remains in the trash and you walk away. That's how you do that.
So we'll see what comes out of that. Before we get out of here this morning, Mo, some rumors coming out of the Bay Area. The receivers for the San Francisco 49ers are hot commodities, apparently. Ayuk and Debo both involved in trade rumors. There is mutual interest between Ayuk and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then the Baltimore Ravens were rumored to have reached out to try to gauge the trade market for Debo Samuels. Mo, what I find more interesting is that the Niners came back and they refuted the Debo stuff. They didn't say a damn thing about Brandon Ayuk. They literally came out yesterday and were like, no one's called us about Debo. Debo's not going anywhere. We're not considering trading him. That's all we have to say. Thank you. Like, that was it. That was all that came out. Nothing was mentioned about Ayuk. So, damn, okay.
I like him. He's a really good receiver. And I'll say this again. He is the better receiver of the two, but he's not the better football player. And because of the way Shanahan designs that offense and the different things they do with Debo, Ayuk has less value. And he's asking for the kind of money that you would give to one of the, I guess, more elite wide receivers. I think
Calvin
he's
Ridley
very
money. Calvin Ridley.
yeah. And well, if I'm going to use Calvin Ridley as the bar, I would say Ayuk is as good as Calvin. He's as good as Calvin Ridley, but the Niners aren't going to value him like that. So, yeah, I would love to have him back, but like you said, they didn't say anything about the rumors about him. They just kept it moving because I think they're leaning towards the fact that he's not going to be part of the organization at some point.
Mo, last thing we got on the docket today, little NBA. Kenny the Jet came out last night, and he said that this is the key part here, a healthy Joel Embiid is a mismatch for the Boston Celtics, implying that Joel Embiid could be the kryptonite for the Boston Celtics if they were to meet in the playoffs. Agree or disagree with Kenny's stance?
He's a mismatch for anybody. So I disagree that changes anything because I think the Celtics are still better than the Sixers. So yes, Embiid can come out and drop 35 and get 11 rebounds, and the Celtics can still win the game. Let's remember, didn't Embiid play against the Celtics last year?
Yeah.
Was he their kryptonite last year? Nope. So there's a big difference between regular season Joel Embiid and playoff Joel Embiid. In this version of Joel Embiid, he's probably not going to be 100%. So if I'm the Sixers, I'm kind of leery about, is he coming back at 70%? Because if he is, and he's our franchise player, I don't want him to come back. I don't want him to come back because that might just set him back even worse for next season.
And Mo, couldn't you argue that the kryptonite for the Boston Celtics plays for them? Isn't the kryptonite Jason Tatum in the playoffs?
I was gonna say you teed it up, but their kryptonite, I was gonna say them themselves as a group, right? Like their biggest enemy is themselves. They implode more times than not in tight situational basketball, and you have to go right to their best player. Sometimes I look at him and I go, "There's no question he's one of the three best players in basketball." And other times I look at him and go,
"Where is he?
Good.
Where is he?"
Right. That's a real thing. There are times where he literally disappears for long stretches, and I'm like, "Is Tatum on the? He is on the floor. He is on the floor." And that's my issue with Tatum. You know, he has more talent probably than Paul Pierce will ever have. But that thing where you make shots when you're not supposed to, or when somebody needs it, he doesn't have that. Paul Pierce had that in spades.
Yeah, there were never stretches in fourth quarters of playoff games where you had to wonder where Paul Pierce was. You knew where he was at all times. There are literally stretches the last 2 or 3 years, specifically in that NBA Finals against the Warriors, where there were whole quarters where you were like, where is Jason Tatum? Because he's doing nothing productive. Nothing productive is coming from him for long stretches of meaningful championship potential opportunity basketball, and he just disappeared.
That series was teed up for him to be the best player in that series.
Yes.
For him, even with Steph on the floor, and I'm not saying that Tatum is a greater player than Steph, but I'm talking about that particular series. That was probably one of the weaker Warriors team. Like nobody even expected them to be there. Great for them to get that title, but that was the Celtics title to lose, and they lost it.
All right, sir. Great show on a Friday to close out the week. Take us to the end.
Hey, appreciate you guys in the chat. Thank you for all the support. Check out all the great content that we have at the Wire to Wire Network. You're always listening to Chris and I, and we appreciate that. Give us a like, a sub, a follow. Any kind of support is much appreciated. Wire to Wire Network. Check us out.
Hey, we're taking a little 48-hour break here, but we'll be back on Monday with more of your sports talk, your sports conversations. We'll talk about everything that happened over the weekend. Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network.